Good evening and welcome to Face to Face. For the Newsfirst team, I'm Niresh Eliyatambi. Well, we may have a new government, a new parliament, a new president and all that, but it's going to take a while to change this country because we have been in a malaise for decades, and every one of us Sri Lankans needs to change our habits, all the bad habits that we have accumulated and become part and parcel of our lives. We need to change all that, whether you're in the private sector or the public sector or wherever. Now, having said that, it's also very, very difficult to get the economy growing at 7%, 8% all of a sudden, because so much groundwork needs to be done beforehand. We need to change so many things in the country. However, there are a few industries which can take off quite quickly, relatively speaking, and one of these is tourism. Now, we are privileged to have the new chairman of Sri Lanka Tourism, Mr. Buddhika Hewawasam, with us this evening. Good evening, Buddhika.
Good evening, Niresh. Good evening.
Right. So to introduce you a little bit to our viewers, Buddhika, you are currently the chairman of the Sri Lanka Tourism Promotions Bureau and also chairman of the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority. Now, you have actually spent a lifetime in the tourism industry, and you, if I can just go back a little bit and talk about your history, you actually started, interestingly enough, at the wildlife department as a ranger.
Of course. Yes.
So you were traipsing around the wildlife parks, and you actually became, I believe, the deputy park warden. Yes. At Horton Plains. Not easy to work up there, although it's nice to visit. And then you joined Sri Lankan Airlines, and you were with Sri Lankan Holidays, which is the holiday arm of the airline, and then with Sri Lankan Air Taxi, which is the domestic arm, and then you moved to human resources within the airline, and you were managing the International Aviation Academy, which became the Sri Lankan Airlines Aviation College, and you won some global awards at that time.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about those awards?
Yes, in that period we actually won the global top 10 from International Air Transport Association, which is the largest aviation association in the world, as its top 10 training organization. So it's one of the key accolades of the organization, which won by very few in Asia. So that was in year 2012. We won that award for Sri Lanka.
Excellent. And then you were seconded by the airline to Sri Lanka Tourism. Yes. A few years ago as Director General and CEO of the Sri Lanka Institute of Tourism and Hotel Management, which we call the Hotel School.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you know all about HR, marketing, and of course the training of youngsters for the tourism industry, hospitality. And your last post was as country head of IATA, the International Air Transport Association, quite a prestigious post. So you're no stranger to this industry, which means that a lot is expected on you, on your shoulders, basically. So, Buddhika, tell me, how do you begin? Now, you are a person who stepped into this area as chairman with a plan, which basically you helped write for the NPP when it was running its campaign. And would you like to show that to our viewers? And yeah. Okay, so this is a Sinhala version, but
We
there is
actually
of course
published the English one as well.
right.
So this is available in our website also in NPP.
Right. So this is the plan which you will be running.
Yes.
With of course improvements as well. Right. So tell us what the situation is now with regard to tourism in Sri Lanka, and what are your immediate aims and objectives, and then further down the road, what are you hoping to do for, let's say, the next 5 years?
Yeah. Nilesh, if I may request you to start with the particular, say, context which we had in tourism from 2022 onwards. That was where we started this policy. So I think background might little help for us to understand what is the current scenario and what is the way forward of ours. So 2022 was the year where NPP launched its tourism framework, which they consider, they are the first political party in Sri Lanka, consider tourism as a priority industry, and which much before they came into power in 2022, they decided to launch the tourism framework to the industry. So that was the year where we were being started. Like-minded tourism professionals and various tourism industry stakeholders get together and try to start this particular dialogue. So that is what is being developed in subsequently within 2 years of time to the tourism policy of the NPP, the national. The particular Jatika Jana Balavega's tourism policy is started in 2022, then fruition into a policy framework in 2024. Before the election, we actually launched it to the industry. So there, at that particular period, which we've been talking about the tourism industry of Sri Lanka, that we have been talking about the post-COVID, and which most of the countries after the post-COVID were recovered from their tourism industry and achieved 100%. If you think about the country like Maldives, it's not only achieved 100%, it achieved more than 100%. Now it has been achieved the similar numbers of tourists, similar to Sri Lanka, but much high revenue. Similar way, if you think about Maldives, the Malaysia, the Thailand, as well as Singapore, those big tourism the rival countries were regained. Similar to that, even in Europe, even in Latin America, most of the countries recovered. But if you think about Sri Lankan scenario, we were still far behind the 2018 levels.
Now, part of that is due to the bankruptcy situation of the government.
Yes, we should think about it like in that manner as well. But if you think about the countries like Maldives, countries like many other parts of the world, has their fair share of problems as well.
Yes.
Might not be the economic bankruptcy, but at the same time the problems and its hit is more or less similar. So even the particular bankruptcy has been declared, there is a ample time period for us to recover the tourism industry. As you know, tourism is one of the key industries which can be recovered very fast, and which may also be fallen very fast with a adverse economic impact or adverse impact as well. So whatever the case, like we were not been able to regain to our pre-2019 levels. That means even 2018 we had about 2.33 million tourists. If you think about our numbers right now, yes, we passed 2 million after so many years of time last year, but at the same time not to the particular level that we achieved at 18. Because in tourism industry, we are looking at two things. One thing, you might be achieving number targets, but at the same time, it doesn't have any effect unless that you achieve the revenue targets.
Absolutely.
So there's no point that you are bringing more and more mass tourists, but at the same time, your revenue levels are low. So our policy revolves around that in one angle, how to recover the numbers and the revenue in our country's tourism industry. On other angle, there's a bigger problem because the tourism has massive amount of leakage. If you think about $100 bringing to Sri Lanka, probably about 60 to 70 odd dollars will go out of Sri Lanka. Sometimes the leakage is even higher. If you think about the foreign direct investment, the hotel partners and everybody who comes down, along with the particular inputs we are putting in there, if it is been only the particular imported inputs, then the leakage will be very high. So that actually is a bigger problem which we need to address by activating the local tourism industry and became other industries part of tourism. So that is the other part, other dimension we are looking at in this aspect. And also human resources also interconnected into that, because more the human resources are being qualified and they come into the industry, then only we can gain the particular tourism revenue to the communities, because these particular employees are obviously the local employees, they will be getting a higher share of tourism income. So human resource development is one other angle. And similar to that, there is one other end of sustainability. If you think about in Sri Lanka, the assets that we can use for tourism is our natural assets, the resources, the marine assets and all sort of things. Either being not utilized at all, we are being overprotective of that, or else we are being destroying that asset in a higher commercialization.
Right.
That means with previous regimes or wherever you see like there is a political intervention on those kind of assets, maybe nature reserves, maybe marine reserves, wherever some guy who has a political interference can build a hotel and vandalize the entire forest.
Right.
But if you go to the legal manner, probably he will never be able to, a proper investor with sustainable mindset will never be able to start a venture in here. So what is our stake on sustainability is the other angle we are looking at it. So these dimensions is the pillar when we have been looking at the tourism industry and its scope of the country. So we set our plans aligning with those dimensions, which are our policy dimensions. One angle the HR, the other angle the sustainability, then the product development and all sort of things.
So all this, Buddhika, has to go hand in hand.
Has to go hand in hand. If you missed one, the other one will not be able to achieve. As an example, the Sri Lanka tourism all this time does not have a product development arm. That's why you see, like say, the products that we develop. The last two products we develop is one is the Ramayana trails, which was being developed I think 15 or 20 years ago.
Right.
And the recent product development effort is Peco Trail. Other than that, we don't have a kind of a holistic, comprehensive product developed by the country.
So when you say product development, it's basically that if a tourist comes back next year, there needs to be something new.
Something new.
Which we see, if you visited Singapore 5 years ago and you go there now, it's completely different.
The marinas, the garden by bay, the night safaris, aquariums, various kind of things.
Right.
Because Singapore, in its own context, has to build up something artificially with brick and mortar. But in a country like ours, there's so much of natural assets which we can create as products. And like large part of Sri Lanka is excluded in the tourism map. The tourists are not going out there. The tourist visitation in those areas is very low. And those aspects need to be addressed with a systematic product development effort.
Right. So, when you talk about areas that have been excluded, could you give us some examples?
As an example, if you think about the national parks and the wildlife, you see there's a over-visitation in certain parks, like Yala. Like Yala has been very much criticized for its over-visitation and having number of jeeps and all sort of stories. But the fact is, Yala is not the largest national park in Sri Lanka, neither the only national park which has leopards and all other kind of wild animals which people are going and seeing in Yala. Within the particular reach of Yala, you have two national parks, Kumana as well as Vilpattu. On the other hand, you have another national park called Boondala.
Yes.
But visitation of those national parks is very, very limited. And you think about the largest national park of this country is Vilpattu, which has very less number of visitors.
Although it's actually much closer to Colombo.
Much closer to Colombo, much closer to the airport as well.
Right.
So you can have the access very, very conveniently sorted, but at the same time the visitation is very limited.
Right.
The fact is, when you develop a product, it has to be developed holistically. Say that you develop the product, say if it's a wildlife tourism or safari or whatsoever, you need to look after the accommodation, you need to look after the access, you need to look after the safety and security. Then you need to look after the activities that they can do. So then only it can be called as a holistic product. So this effort cannot be done by a single-handed private party. Maybe you can build a hotel, maybe you can start a DMC or destination management company, but at the same time the investing on a product development effort is necessarily need to have a government intervention with the professionals, with the people who has not the micro economic aspect, but the macroeconomic aspect need to look into it. And you need to have intergovernmental coordination to do so.
Now, speaking of intergovernmental coordination, this has been one of the biggest issues, not just for tourism, but any kind of project where two or more ministries have
Yes.
to interact. It's very territorial, or it used to be,
Yes.
where Minister A has tourism, Minister B has wildlife,
Yes.
and the two will not interact. And the officials, knowing that the ministers are territorial, the officials don't interact either.
Exactly.
They may form some committees, but nothing much comes of it because of this clash
Yes.
of egos, basically. And of course, there's budgets and money, and so rivalries were always there.
Yes.
So, for example, right now, and for decades, liquor licenses for hotels have been a big issue.
Yes.
But liquor is under the excise department, which is not under the tourism minister. So
Yes.
these are the problems. And then you have things like sports tourism,
Yes.
where the sports minister is involved, and then you may not have the tourism minister involved in that. But has this situation been sorted out because the NPP has a different structure internally within the party, and that structure continues to dictate certain working operations?
Yeah, like Neeraj, obviously with the NPP has a different structure, and NPP is more of a composite political movement where people have been talking to each other, and what the ego clashes are working on the basis like that. The political parties, it resolved to a great extent. But at the same time, you can't depend on a particular manifesto or a party's structure when you have been developing industry. That's why if you've been taking over our policy, we took most of the particular effort to address this problem rather than like product development whatsoever, because like say all the tourist board chairmans and the heads and all, they all had good vision. They all have good objectives. I might say, like say all my predecessors, they never had bad plans.
And many were actually from the private sector.
Yeah, they had like good plans. They came with all the good promises and everything. But if you think about the implementation level, is very, very low. The fact is, most of the tourism products to be implemented, you need the intergovernmental coordination, and also you need a kind of a seamless implementation flow. If your idea will take about 2 years to implement, which is the case, and your chairmanship is only we ended up within 1 year, you will not be able to resolve it. So you see, most of the predecessors, they still come and say like, say I was thinking of doing this. I was actually planned this. There are a lot of good plans, but never been implemented. Why it been happen? Not because of any inability of those gentlemen and ladies, but the inability of the structure. So we address this in the structural manner in 2 ways. One thing, we are talking about the priority industry status for tourism. Priority industry status for tourism means you consider tourism over and above the rest of the industries, at least for the period of economic recovery and period of development of the country.
That's a very good idea.
So that's the key idea here. So even you think about our manifesto, what we have been talking about is a priority industry status for tourism, which is the first priority, which actually shows that tourism can make decisions over and above the rest, of course with the coordination of the intergovernmental dialogue, but tourism interests need being protected over and above the rest. So in Sri Lanka we have 2 examples. One example of such is the apparel industry. Like there's something called Greater Colombo Economic Commission, which was actually the
predecessor to the BOI.
Predecessor to the BOI, and which was actually the trigger and the stimuli to create this entire industry, a global industry in Sri Lanka. If at all we didn't create a Greater Colombo Economic Commission, I don't see that dimensional change or revolutionary industry will be started in Sri Lanka. And the other thing is the accelerated Mahali scheme, which was originally planned for 30 years, but end of the day it was being ended up within period of 6 years, because you have been giving all the autonomy and the powers to the particular industry or the segment where things can be very fast. So if you need tourism to be the accelerator, the economic force and the biggest economic generator of the country, you need to give that boost to tourism. So the first thing is this restructuring of the organization which address this problem. So that is the key thing. If you have been taking our policy, it doesn't talk about how we go to there, how we go to this place, how we improve the marketing and all this kind of thing, which subsequently is important. But you need to have a kind of viable, empowered structure to cater that.
Right.
So that's the whole aim of this. So we are planning something called National Tourism Commission, what we call here as NTC.
Would you like to show that structure to our viewers?
Yes. So this above you can see something called National Tourism Commission, which is similar to any other commission vested by the Parliament with the rights where they can take decisions then and there, or like say they can empower to take decisions and implement. So this commission consists of those parties or of those people who are actually want to trigger the particular tourism industry and who has that vision, where they have the government empowerment and the mandate to take it forward.
Now, this structure also includes the private sector.
Of course, yes.
The
yes.
international airlines or foreign
international
airlines,
the associations, the private sector, the community organization and the provincial level tourism, because you know tourism is a parallel subject in our 18th amendment.
Right.
So because of that, it is provincial council as well as the central government is being parallelly doing it. So we cannot forget about the participation of the provincial level. So that's been all covered. And one other aspect is, if you are thinking about all these organizations, my organization, SLTDA, or maybe Promotions Bureau, whatever the organization, these are implementing organizations. Somebody has to formulate policies, somebody has to monitor that, and somebody has to implement it. Just having the implementation organization doesn't do any good for tourism. You need to think about it, you need to plan it, you need to monitor that plan, only then the implementation can happen. So you ended up with the implementation organization and you expect them to plan as well. Then the plan doesn't
work.
So here we have been talking about Tourism Policy Formulation Council, which consists of all these kind of specialized areas. Maybe it is R&D, maybe it is the particular tourism investment and investment promotions, all these things. On the other angle, you have this particular implementation bodies. Formulation and implementation should be under the NTC, National Tourism Commission. Then only we can push it forward. Then only we can be able to get the industry going in a right direction. Because if you think about the role of the ministries, more or less facilitating roles. And we ended up, when you have a good minister who has some vision, who has some implementation, who has some plans, industry will boom. When there's a minister which does not have that kind of plans, you see obviously the industry will go here and there without a strategic direction. But this can't happen. If you think about any other country, if you think about Singapore tourism, if you think about Malaysia, or maybe like in Thailand or even in India, tourism is not been like in the hand of the politicians. Tourism is not been like in the hands of an individual. It lies in the hands of a capable structure where the things will be monitored. If you think about India, Incredible India campaign is being, I think, it lasts for last 15 to 20 years. Nobody's been touching it.
So what you're saying is it's institution driven and not
it's
personality
driven and the process
driven. It doesn't matter who the minister is.
It doesn't matter who the minister is, because end of the day, who the minister is, industry is being governed by the industry stakeholders, because this is private sector led industry, and the tourism stakeholders are same stakeholders. Only the particular figurehead is being changed.
Right.
So, but we left to the figurehead to save our industry, which actually is the changing structure. So this is actually the first cabinet paper we drafted, put it in the cabinet, and now in the formulation level, which is the restructuring of these particular parapublic institutes. We call them as a parapublic institute. So that is the first step. Right. Without taking this step, the things I talked to you earlier will just be dreams. I can also be one of my, going the same path of my predecessors. I can tell that I had good plans, but I was not being able to implement unless that I didn't get this structure.
We can expect cabinet to pass this, and
very soon it will be passed, and that will be actually our main I think like the main objective, the governance as well as the state priority for the industry is something which we need to be secured.
Right. We need to take a short commercial break right now. We're in conversation with Mr. Buddhika Hewawasam, Chairman of Sri Lanka Tourism. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Life's not about lines, it's about breaking free. It's not about boxes, it's about exploding beyond them. You're the miracle generation. Leading the way, rocking a magical vibe. Unleash your vibe. YFM Relax Party.
Emotions, spiritual voice එකක් වගේ voice එක.
No!
ඇයි රුෂි මන්දියා එහෙම බැලුවේ?
ආතිකක් හොයා. Nazi catch a grenade. Number dinne na mata duක් වෙන්න බෑ.
Fire house එකක් කියලා කියන්න පුළුවන්.
Number dinne na සත්තයි නගනි මම.
The Voice Sri Lanka, Season 3. Weekends at 8:30 p.m. on Sirasa TV.
ඒගොල්ලන්ට මේ අපිට කියන්න බෑනේ මේ අනේ හාල් ටික හොයලා දෙන්න කියලා.
අහන ප්‍රශ්නේ තමයි උත්තර දෙන්න ඔබතුමාත් අහපු ප්‍රශ්නෙට. ඌ බලාපොරොත්තු කන්දක් දීලානේ ඇවිල්ලා තියෙන්නේ.
සදාකාලිකව ඒගොල්ලන්ට කොරායි කිමුල්ලු බල ඉන්න පුළුවන්.
ජනතාව බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන ඇත්ත වශයෙන්ම ක්ෂණික යම්කි සහනයක්.
දැනට තියෙන රජයයි ඒ තිබිච්ච රජයන අතර අහසට පොළොව වගේ වෙනසක් තියෙනවා.
මොකද අපි දැක්ක මීට පෙරත් ඔය ජවනිකාව අපි දැක්ක ඔය නාට්‍ය අපි දැක්කා. කලබල වෙන්න එපා රොෂාන්. අපි ඔය වගේ ප්‍රශ්න කරන්න ආචාර්ය උපාධි සහතික නැතුණා කියලා කියන්න පුළුවන්ද?
අතේක පැහැදිලි කිරීමක් කරන්න අවශ්‍ය ඔබට තීරණය කරන්න පුළුවන්.
අපි හැමෝම එකතු වෙලා මේ රට හදමු.
දවස සතිය දිනපල සවස 6:30ට.
Welcome back to Face to Face. We are speaking with Mr. Buddhika Hewawasam, who is the chairman of Sri Lanka Tourism. Buddhika, now there are a few immediate issues which have been troubling the industry and have come into public focus. One is that of visas. We had a fiasco last year where all of a sudden it wasn't even the tourism minister. It was another minister who had to deal with, his area was public security, and he suddenly, through the immigration department, which was under him, brought in this visa fee, and then we had a lot of cancellations, and basically our tourism industry was messed up with this ad hoc decision.
Yes.
And then this had to go to the Supreme Court, and then the Supreme Court ordered that policy reversed. It was not reversed. The immigration, I think the Controller General ended up, being arrested.
Yes.
All kinds of drama, bit like a teledrama, really.
Yeah.
All for nothing. And now we've got back on track. Now, in the future, how do we prevent things like this happening? Where these are institutions which are supposed to assist tourism. They need to actually know their role, and the importance has to be given to tourism. So has that been sorted out now?
Yeah, actually, that was the first thing we sorted when the government is being appointed the president's been elected in September itself. September 27th, the fiasco is over.
Right.
That means we reinstate the particular system back to its normalcy. So, moment it was being reinstated, if you think about that month, the September was the least increase year on year.
Yes.
In the entire period, and even the August onward, this decrease was been seen. And the moment it was been removed, tourism coming into more normalcy and a normal pathway, a tourist can come in through the ETA and enter into the country within about 1 hour's time, or even less than that. Like right now, 10 to 15 minutes to 30 minutes time, they entered into the particular country through airport.
Right.
Which was earlier 4 to 5
out.
hours or what. So it was been sorted.
Right.
And the system is been reinstated. Apart from that, we are actually having a next plan of giving a particular, say, visa waiver, like fee waiver status, a free visa status for 39 countries which has the tourism potential.
Right.
Which includes our larger destinations as well.
So this is likely to come...
very soon. Likely to come because like now it's the heart of the season, like say in the peak of the season, which we don't want to upset the tourism flow and the revenue flow of the country. But subsequently, within the first quarter itself, this will be implemented. With that, people have the ease of being traveling to Sri Lanka. The tourist has ease of being access in the country. And I must say it is ironical that some people have been saying like the previous regime is in power, anyway we'll achieve 2 million. But I must say if their previous regime in power, then the entire visa fiasco will remain. We will end up in 1 million.
Yes. Well, now the main thing is that are the different organizations talking to each other?
Yes,
There's no ad hoc unilateral decisions like this, which I mean, even Sri Lanka tourism was unaware that this was going to happen.
And I think the political authorities stated at that time they were not been aware about it.
Right. Another key issue which has been in the forefront is foreign tourists coming in here on tourist visas, and then they stay and they start businesses, sometimes with local partners, and that can be detrimental to the local tourism businesses. What's the situation there?
We are actually very sensitive about it. Actually, we do accept the fact that certain tourists came here on time being, I think it was being happened not recently with fast whatever the post-COVID period, there is a accumulating number of tourists, especially in down south as well as various places, tourist resort state areas where they overstay or they start doing various occupations. So the visa itself does not cover any kind of occupations for tourists to come and do because it is forbidden, it is restricted, but they continuously doing it because we were not being enforced law. But we started, if you think about the recent week, we started it in Unawatuna. We already captured few of those foreign nationals who are actually running various things. Some of them are running salons to bakeries to eateries to whatever. So we started it and we will continue because we are very, very stringent. Government has been taken a very stringent decision. Tourists are coming here for the tourism interest, not for any other kind of interest, because they can come as proper investors or various other kind of pathways are there. If they are a tourist, there are certain scopes of tourism which they can't overcome that. So status is, it started right now, but there are certain, that's why I said it's a sensitive issue. With the tourists to come and do a business here, they need to venture out with a local party. And most cases, when you captured them, they were just producing the local party saying that we are helping them, we are tourists, we come as volunteers, and various sort of disguise is there. So the local party has been saying this business is mine. So in such cases, the case might not go further. So we right now work very closely with the community who's being affected. So they were the people who give us the details, they were the people who actively work with law enforcing organizations, because in enforcing the law, I think the strongest law in this point is not tourism law, but the particular immigration law of the country, where the visa restrictions are and the conditions are given very clearly. And you can just, if they are violating that, you can deport them. Immediately after producing the courts, you can deport them. So that is to start, we need some strong evidence as well as strong backing from the community. Now we are getting slowly those kind of backings. So with that, we have been very actively and effectively doing it. And also in some cases, since it's a sensitive issue, some of the people are trying to say, okay, this is the type of foreigners who are doing jobs. We have to capture this particular A country or B country or C country. We as a government, we as a tourism authority as well as the law enforcing authorities, we don't care what country they are. We care only whether they are being violating the country's law. So we don't have a kind of favoration over one country or other, or capturing this country or that. So the capturing is in blanket basis. Only thing we need to have the proper evidence in place. Now we get it and we started it. So you can see subsequently all the tourism resort areas, this will be happening. Because
right. And what is the role of the tourist police, which it's been there for decades,
yes,
but
yes.
it hasn't really been very effective because it's sort of a poor cousin within the police department. And of course, the safety of tourists has been a big issue in the past.
Yes. Yes.
What plans do you have of strengthening that?
Well, actually, we had a kind of discussion with the currently the acting IGP as well, and also the senior DIG who's been handling tourist police, as well as the top officials of the tourist police, along with the tourism officials. We came into a conclusion the pivotal role which tourist police need to play, because it's critical for you to have a kind of exclusive law enforcing agency, a police unit in Sri Lanka, because we are being talking about increasing numbers of tourists. So then the safety, the police related matters is very high. So tourist police, while it is being centralized in its headquarters or whatsoever, each police station will be given a specific exclusive tourist police officers who are skillful, who are actually with the capabilities of enforcing law, maybe multiple language communication and all these kind of abilities in all the tourism zones. So initially we identified 80 police stations in Sri Lanka.
80 police stations.
Yeah. So that will actually covers, I think, the larger part of the tourist resorts areas in the country, where there will be at least minimum of 2 officers dedicated for tourism purposes or tourist police. So then in the entire given time you have a network. Whatever the particular complaints comes in, we will be having a hotline as well. Currently also we are getting a lot of calls, the particular thing and the law enforcing part of it, and then they can pass it to the relevant police station and immediately taking the action. So if you see all these kind of incidents which was being raised through social media, WhatsApp and all, were resolved within about 24 hours of time. I must say, I must thank the police department as well as the tourist police for their active involvement and the efficient manner of being resolving it. Earlier what happened is you have the tourist police unit, probably it is being decentralized and not being connected. Now the network is being laid and we will be empower each of those units with the facilities that they need.
Right. Now what about, I'm afraid we are running out of time, but
Yes.
what about room numbers in this country? Now I think there are about 50,000 rooms under the star classification,
Yeah.
but then you have a lot of homestays as well.
Of course, yeah.
So what's the combination you're looking at in expanding these room numbers?
Yeah, Neeraj, in this case there is a very blurred path, because of the room numbers that we have been talking about are the registered room numbers
Right.
of Tourism Development Authority. So if I've been talking about the registered room numbers, we like into 2024 we had about 55,000 registered rooms, and ironically in the informal sector, that means unregistered, we had about another 65,000 rooms.
65,000.
Yeah.
So that's larger. Actually.
That is larger. If you have been like, it's like 50 to 50. So
Right.
any other country, it might be 20% or 10%. One good way to be check-in, you just go into Airbnb or Booking.com and all. You just see how many properties were listed there. You see the number of properties listed in Airbnb against our registered properties. You can understand what I'm talking about. So
Right.
sometimes increasing room numbers is also a kind of a sensitive issue. You see the Colombo city, room numbers are being increased exorbitantly within the particular 2-3 years of time. Or last year we had so much of additional rooms. When
Right.
there are additional rooms, when there is no action or the Colombo city is not being booming equally to the level of the room addition, you seems to be a kind of a drop of the prices as well as the lesser occupancy.
That's market
overall.
forces. Yeah.
So the market forces work. On other hand, we see in certain areas which has a tourism potential, which has very less investment and no rooms as well. So to address this, first one is formalizing the informal sector of tourism. That we started by providing so many incentives, the ease out our registration process, going into the villages, having the particular mobile units for people to register their properties, the properties like homestays or properties which is listed in Airbnb and all these kind of places to come into the system. Because coming into the system is very important for them, not only the sake of government to make it taxable or anything like that, but even for them to get the benefits like loans to the liquor license, to even in some kind of a, say, relief when there is a problem. All these kind of things come in that. Also, it is important for us to standardize the particular quality of the tourism accommodation in the country. So, formalizing itself, if we properly do it, add a larger chunk of rooms to the room inventory of the country. On the other hand, we are easing out, or we are making the country's the tourism areas and the potential tourism areas investment friendly, where people has the ease of being invest there, make the rooms and all sort of things. And also parallelly we develop the particular community tourism organization, which community can come into the tourism accommodation or any other kind of tourism business easily. So these three pathways is what we have been looking at. So I think room inventory is not a matter at the moment. At least if you have been thinking about the formal and informal, we had about quite a chunk of rooms, 55,000 formal and 65,000 informal. And if we have been getting them more formal, plus we are adding this investment pathway, we can develop it holistically in Sri Lanka. What happens is room inventories are developed in certain popular tourist areas, while the potential tourism areas does not have any room. So that imbalance is what we need to control.
Right. And in the past, of course, Sri Lanka tourism has had various loan schemes and so on.
Yes.
Are you planning on introducing those as well?
Of course, yes. We actually plan on empowering the community tourism organization very much. We started it with various parts of the country, Habarana, Mandaranura, Arugambe and Hirikatiya and various areas where we want the community to be part of it and community to be empowered. Maybe like say providing resources, maybe it's financial resources, maybe it's training, maybe it's skills, maybe market introduction. All these are part of it. We already started because we know that this one best way of tourism to be benefited our economy is the flow of income to the real community there. So that's what we are being like planning on that right now.
Right. What about my final question to you?
Yes.
What about niche markets? Now we have small areas where there's adventure tourism, whale watching and so on. What's the potential there?
There is a high potential because one way that is the way that we can increase the per tourist per day income. Like say the expenditure of the tourist will be increased if it is a specialized niche markets. And there are many niche products coming into the market, probably in a ad hoc manner. Now we are formalizing them as well. We create committees, like if you think about air-based activities, skydiving, paragliding, say paramotoring, all these kind of things are done here and there. But at the same time, now we get the regulations sorted out and we are supporting those industries to boom with those intergovernmental dialogue, introducing them to civil aviation and various parties. And the marine tourism is one area where we are just about to launch the roadmap of marine tourism. And similar way, we go to more and more specialized products. Because the specialized products and the niches is the only way we can capture certain specialized markets. And also our traditional market which generate tourists, we didn't reach these segments. These are probably the high returning segments to the country. So we are very focused on that and we are encouraging those kind of product development initiatives. That's exactly why I told you that the product development arm of Sri Lanka tourism is working hand in hand with these people who are actually involved in product development initiatives and innovations.
Right. So we can shortly expect huge restructuring.
Yes.
And then the product going forward. And what about a national campaign? My final question is a national campaign, because for the last 15 years, we, Sri Lanka, a tourism oriented country, have not gone out to the world and said, this is Sri Lanka.
Yeah. Yeah. Nilesh, it's like this. So national campaign because there's organic growth and an induced growth of tourism market. What we see is more or less a organic growth and partially a induced growth because we do certain kind of ad hoc campaigns, but not the national campaign. But what exactly is a national campaign is a question. Because I think the previous regime has been set a campaign. Just after the COVID, they planned it. I think just after the economic crisis, they planned it. But then it was been actually delayed, and it was been landed with us right now. But the fact is, it's a 5-market campaign which is having a kind of a outdated slogan. But what we expect is a real national campaign. If you think about a national campaign, you may heard about something called nation branding.
Yes.
So nation branding has to connect with the national campaign. If you think about Incredible India, or if you think about Amazing Thailand, or Singapore's whatsoever the campaigns they are running, they're all interconnected. The uniformity of the voice is being heard by the people.
Right. So it's not just for tourism, it's for the country.
Not for tourism. Think about Bhutan. They were talking about sustainability. Everybody wants to visit Bhutan. They restrict the number of tourists. And there's no other voice being heard. What happened is we are having several different voices. We are not being uniform. So we are right now started a national campaign brainstorming part. By end of this month, you might be seeing that there is a national branding conference in Sri Lanka. So the nation branding, how to do it and all. And to make it more or less a kind of a effort of all parties. Rather than to create a campaign with the agency and planted it in somewhere. You created campaign organically with the people who are involved and then created it through a proper whatsoever the creatives. But the campaign and the branding should come organically. The brand promise we are giving to the world should be developed by us. By the industry, by various inter-industry dialogues. So that's been already started. So you can see that the national campaign will be launched at least within the first quarter, or the mid of the first quarter is what we have been targeting, which is focusing on the off-season and subsequently the brand building of Sri Lanka.
Excellent news indeed, and I'm afraid we are out of time. My thanks to Buddhika Hewawasam, Chairman of Sri Lanka Tourism, and thank you to you at home for watching. Don't go away because the news is coming up next. Have a good evening.